All right, I think we're going to get started here. Again, thanks for joining us if you're joining us live, and for watching it if you're not. Format here, we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to actually have an interview as opposed to a presentation that we've been doing. But I think the same, we're still doing, I think we can still do like a Q&A. If you have any questions, comments, whatever, I'll be monitoring the chat comment sections, so feel free to throw those in there. Maybe we'll throw those in towards the end. But I think right now, I think we're just gonna get started here. I'm gonna introduce here Gary Gisselman. Is going to be interviewing Tenzin Botsford from the Red Door Family Farm. So there you go. Take it away.
So thank you very much, Ben. So this afternoon, as Ben said, we're doing a little something different. We're really having an actual live chat this afternoon. So this afternoon, we welcome Tenzin Botsford from the Red Door Family Farm. And what we're interested today is hearing a story. So we want to hear the story of what it means in 2021, what it means to be on the farm, on the family farm, how things have changed maybe in the more recent history, but also maybe a little bit about how he sees things going into the future. So, but first of all, Tenzin, we welcome and we ask you for your story. You can tell us your story however you want to tell us. We are interested in hearing the story of you and your family farm. So welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, Gary. I'm honored to be asked to be here, and it's kind of exciting. I think I'll start with I'll try to keep sort of a brief overview of how my wife and I sort of changed our trajectory toward farming and how we found that process to be, and then maybe try to go a little bit further into what that might mean going forward. And so Stacy and I both grew up here in Marathon County, both graduated from DC Everest. And we traveled around a lot. We used to sort of run rivers and do adventure tourism sort of things, and we spent a lot of time doing that. And that was intense outdoor seasonal work. And we learned a lot about, relying on ourselves, relying on each other, as sort of a team to get through the challenges of the day and bring other people along with us. And we learned a little bit about sort of hospitality with that too, because we were bringing paying guests along with us all the time. And we both really liked being outside, being physically active, liked those sorts of challenges, and we both really liked having sort of tangible results at the end of the day, being able to look back and see what we had done. And I think we both, I think it's fair to say, kind of got tired of sort of the hospitality end of river guiding, and wanted to kind of be able to focus more on the project, and less on catering to guests in certain ways. And we did really enjoy that, and that was all part of that project, certainly. And the other thing that led us, I think, to agriculture specifically was that we spent a lot of time on waterways, which are really unique passages through landscapes, because you're not on the main road, so you don't see the front of the farm or the front of the business or the front of whatever. The rivers tend to be running behind the farm or behind the industry or whatever the land use is in that area. They're sort of running through the back, and so you see what comes out of those landscapes, both in terms of the people that you meet at the back are the ones actively engaged in the work, maybe a little bit more so, and also that just actually the runoff or whatever is coming out of the landscape is going into the river, and you see that, you see the results of it. I actually went on to do some river survey work where we were monitoring and measuring those sorts of impacts on waterways all over the western U.S. And wherever we went, the people that we met who were engaged in agriculture at least on a family farm sort of scale, where they were actively participating in the growing of the crops and the managing of these things, just seemed to be content in a sort of a deep down way. There was a contentedness, a groundedness that we found very attractive and appealing, and I think that linked us in a lot of ways and kind of tipped us off that was something we might want to explore and pursue for ourselves. So that, I don't know, that's really the best explanation I have. It's a bit of a mystery even to me, we just sort of, the conversation kept turning a little bit more toward agriculture all the time, and maybe we could do this or maybe we could do that, so then when we decided that was really something that we wanted to do and something we wanted to pursue, she was in Idaho and I was working out of Western Oregon, and we found an apprenticeship program on a vegetable farm out there, and she got accepted into this vegetable growers apprenticeship program in Oregon, and I was still continuing to do river survey work during the growing months, and we rented a little house in the country, and we raised a few pigs and a few vegetables and that sort of thing, and we started kind of taking farm business management courses through the OSU extension and some things like that, and trying to learn everything that we could, and touring different farms, and through her connections with her apprenticeship program at Horton Road Organics out there, she got to know a lot of farmers in that area, and we had good connections out there through family and friends, and so we really got to sort of dive right in and get in personal kind of working on or being a part of the conversation with different farmers that were doing the sort of farming that we were interested in, which was really just narrowed down to small scale, what I'll just call sustainable. There's a lot of conversation around the right sorts of words to use there, but at the time that's what we were looking at, was small scale and sustainable agriculture, and didn't know if it was going to be more heavily focused toward animal agriculture or vegetables or what at that time, and so we worked on different farms doing different things out there, and talked to different farmers and looked at what it takes to draw up a business plan, and had a million conversations about where we wanted to be, because at that point neither one of us had ever even finished a 1-year lease since leaving home, so trying to think about buying a place and really settling into it was a bit intimidating. So we had a lot of conversations about where to be, and we eventually decided to come back to Marathon County, be closer to our folks, and we had a baby on the way at that point, and we wanted to raise our kids near their grandparents and be connected in that way, and have that resource base, which we valued enough to come home for, but we underestimated how much we were going to need that, I would say, by a long shot. So, and yeah, it's been great. The reception has been really good. and it's hard to start a direct sale farm business because you've got to start to sell your product, and you've got to have the product, and you don't have, the history or the experience doing that on this place and with your own systems. And we ended up teaming up Stony Acres. We met Kat and Tony at Stony Acres, and they sort of recruited us right to their little corner of Marathon County there. We're about 5 miles north of Athens, right in the northwest corner of Marathon County. And we ended up buying our property from Ed Schultz, from Tony's dad. And he really helped us do that by allowing us to split the parcel so that we could get a loan to build a house and do a land contract and that sort of thing. There's a lot of hurdles to starting a farm, as far as finding land, building your own production infrastructure, and selling product if you are doing direct sales, which is, I'm not sure what the numbers are, but by and large, people starting new farms, it's almost all direct sales.
When was this? When did you?
This was spring of 2014 that we broke ground on the house and planted strawberries. Was the very first thing we planted out there. And we were going and getting water from the neighbor's spigot because we didn't have, I think we had a driveway, but we didn't have a mailbox, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have a well, it was just a cornfield. And we planted those strawberries for the next year, and then about halfway in July, we planted fall crops to bring to the winter farmers market. So that was sort of our initial planting season. We broke ground on the house in May or June, and planted the first strawberries right away and raised some chickens, broiler chickens. So that was kind of the initial start. And the plan was then in 2015 to start our CSA program, which is community supported agriculture is what that means, or what that stands for. What it means is essentially that people buy in shares to your farm. So they sort of the like less exciting way to say it, but maybe quicker way to understand, is that it's essentially a subscription model. So people pay up front ahead of time, and they say, we're gonna give you the money now when you need it for seeds and all the different things that you need money for in the spring to get going. And then as you have food, you deliver a box. And ours, there's different models, but ours is 7 to 12 different things that are available for 20 weeks basically starting the first Wednesday in June, and then runs for 20 weeks. And since then we've added on, season extension, winter shares, and some other add-ons with other local businesses, coffee roasters and a shrub company that some friends of ours do out of Stevens Point. And then Alex, who works on our farm and is kind of becoming a farm manager there, has a layer business that she operates on the farm, and so we do egg shares with her eggs, things like that. And so it's really just sort of grown bit by bit, and we knew we wanted to do organic agriculture. Basically right out of the gates, our biggest sort of draw to agriculture was wanting to have a healthy lifestyle, produce a healthy product for people, and take good care of the land that we were on. And also to produce something meaningful that tied us into our community in a meaningful way. And so for us, that was organic all the way through, and whether certified or not, that was always the intention for us. And we did decide to certify pretty much as soon as we could. It was a 3-year process. Yeah. And that's served us well. You know, both it's nice when people ask to just say yes, we're organic, instead of having to explain a lot. But also the organic agency that we use is MOSA, and they offer a lot of resources, and sort of their record keeping requirements, I think, force us to be better farmers anyway. So I think that ultimately there's an expense associated with it, but there's pretty good cost share programs as well, and there's, you know, you get back end support also that I think balances it out and makes it an easy decision for us. And different enterprises and different operations have a different equation, obviously, but for us it's a really good fit, and works well. So that's kind of the scoop. People, have supported us a lot. They've welcomed us into the community. Both things I wasn't sure how that was going to go, but not that we haven't had challenges or come up short of our goals for filling the CSA or things different years, but generally speaking, every year we've had more and more interest and an easier time both producing and selling our products. And
So how large is your farm?
we're the farm is 36 acres, but we are growing vegetables on 8 to 10 acres, I would say, and we've got about 15 acres under cultivation. So some of that is one or multi-year fallow with cover crops that are essentially a rest period and regenerating the soil.
So you moved very well into the winter. You mentioned the winter market and the summer market, of course. Was that a pretty easy move in? As you settle on starting the farm, the farmers markets then became perhaps an obvious choice for you in addition to the CSA program then.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And the way that we built our business model is that we figure out how many CSA shares we want to serve, and we figure out how much of each thing we need and when, and then we work back and generate a planting schedule off of that. And so that means we've got multiple plantings of a lot of crops throughout. Almost everything gets planted more than once. There's 4 plantings of carrots, there's 6 or 7 plantings of spinach, there's probably 12 or 14 plantings of lettuce, there's 3-4 plantings of broccoli, 3 plantings of beets, and we've got some high tunnels as well. So some of those plantings are very small and they're a little extra early or a little extra late going into the high tunnels. But so that kind of, so that we've always got a variety of fresh produce. But in order to sort of ensure on our end that we can meet the needs of our CSA, we want to aim higher than, if we got 131 shares, we don't want to plant 131 broccolis, so we want to give ourselves some buffer there. And so we'll add 20% for that. And then we add another 20% for market and restaurants and that sort of stuff. And as we've come along, certain times of year and certain crops, depending on how we've now noticed, we sell to restaurants and grocery stores and things like that as well. And we've come to know what sort of things are going to move there and what sort of things are going to move at the market more, and we've adjusted those planting numbers accordingly. But that's sort of our baseline is what we need for the CSA, add 40%. And if we are trying a new crop, that's where we would start essentially.
And that's been sufficient. The CSAs, the farmers markets, both winter and summer, pretty much has been sufficient from your beginning to enable you to grow and to be successful, I guess.
Yeah,
To
and
your business, I guess matching your business model would be the, you know, your goal, so to speak.
yeah, and it was tricky the first few years because we didn't have the infrastructure or the know-how or the skill set or the connections to produce or move enough food to really, pay for the farm and ourselves and our cost of living and everything else, and to expand and to get more infrastructure. So it was really, a chicken egg cart horse scenario there the first couple of years, but then pretty quickly and very thankfully, we started to hit our stride where we could every year felt like we could reinvest and expand a little bit and a little bit. And now we're at a point where we're not really expanding our CSA shares, and we're not really expanding our physical footprint on the farm that we're growing in. We are still producing more food every year as we get better at farming.
But I guess one of the unusual stories would be your first years. One of the intriguing stories for me would be your first. I mean, not being farmers, not being a part of a farmer family. You just sort of landing. Although you did have your experiences out west, of course, that helped you. But landing here in Marathon County.
Yeah.
Here's some land. Okay, now this is what we want to do. To me, that sort of a fascinating story of your farm and how you came here to Marathon County and
yeah,
after a while can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, well, that was a real challenge, and we worked really hard at it, and we came up with a 9-year cash flow spreadsheet that, okay, this is how much we'll aim to have this much, and yeah, we're gonna lose X amount of money the first year, but then by the next year we'll have these things in place, and we think we could expand to this much, and then we'd be breaking even, and then we could start making a little bit of money and that sort of thing. And we really spelled it out, and we, like I say, we really debated where to be, right? And then we came back and we were planning to be sort of in the Amherst area. It was just sort of a good triangulation area between the location of our respective parents, and we knew it to be a progressive agriculture community there and had some connections there. And then, eventually we met up with Stony Acres, and they sort of said, well, there's some nice things about this area, and we've got more market than we can serve and that sort of thing, and it really helped out. And they offered to share equipment, planting schedules, all kinds of information to help us get rolling. And Stacy worked there the first year. So while I was building the house, she was working at Stony Acres, and we were just kind of getting the wheels moving. So we had some income coming in that way. I think now I can go ahead and freely admit, and I cooked up a scheme to pay myself to build the house, so that was kind of how the cash flow worked. And so we did that sort of a program to get through that first year and get up and running. And we also got really lucky. I mean, like I say, we had Ed's willingness to sell us part of the farm sell us part of the farm at all, let us split the parcel, let us do a land contract, that sort of thing. The open arms that we were welcomed into the community, essentially as direct competition by Stony Acres and other farms. There's not a whole lot of industries, I don't think, where you can show up and say, hey, I want to compete directly with you, and they'll say, great, glad you're here. Let me show you the ropes. Let me tell you all our trade secrets, So that was really remarkable and an incredible experience. And it continues to be the case. And we're still pretty new, but we have now 2 apprentices that have been on our farm for 3 years. And we try to stay active in different programs and reaching out and helping other farms, if they're getting started, or if they're transitioning to a certain portion of vegetable production in addition to whatever else they might have going on. And we try to really continue to foster that collaborative spirit, because I do think there's a lot of growth potential, and you talk to different people in different places, and a lot of people say, oh well, we're not selling as many CSA shares as we used to, or the market's kind of saturated and this and that. But the reality is, I mean, at the farmers market here in Wausau, I think it's somewhere between 1% and 2% of people that visit the farmers market in any given year, of 1 to 2% of the population of Wausau, or the Wausau area. And so there's a lot, but every single person here is eating something, right? So there's a lot of room for growth, and it's about telling our story. It's about connecting with people. It's about making our products appealing and accessible and convenient, and kind of, in some ways sort of breaking into people's routines a little bit, becoming a part of the routine and becoming something that they
Because
want.
you sort of found your niche then, because the Athens area, in addition to Stony Acres, sort of becoming a little bit of a center of organic farming, you use the term progressive farming, sort of becoming a little area up there.
Yeah, it really is, and that's what it takes, right? Is it takes somebody doing it, kind of getting there, prying the door open a little bit, and then inviting other people to come and participate, and understanding that we as an industry are better served. The better we serve our clientele, and the more we cooperate with each other, the more robust our little corner of Marathon County, and even reaching out farther than that in many ways, the more opportunities that there are. We can collaborate and share buying power. We can share equipment. We can share knowledge. We can, sometimes work together to serve a market that maybe no individual farm would have enough of whatever product to sell to, a bigger account. There's just so many ways, and just backing each other up. We really struggle to grow potatoes, for example. On our farm, we've got heavier soil, and it just doesn't quite fit the rest of our system. The timing's a little different, and their needs are just different enough that they tend to get neglected until it's a little too late. And some friends of ours down in the Amherst area actually grow great potatoes, and we tend to, so far, we do very well on carrots. And so we've worked out a deal where it works well for them to just grow some extra potatoes, and works good for us to grow some extra carrots, and then we trade with each other.
You also do good with beets, I know that.
Yeah,
too.
and we do well with beets. Yeah, beets and carrots have really been a mainstay for us, and we have them, not all year round, but most of the year we have beets and carrots available.
And the winter market, you're in the summer market right now.
Yep.
And then how is the winter market? Because you have had a variety of different locations for the winter market. You seem to be settled a little bit now on Wausau Avenue, but is that continuing to be a stable force for you?
Yeah, it really is. We, some of our best markets of the year will be at the winter market. And partly there's less people there vending, and partly we have season extensions, so we have maybe an outsized presence in that venue, but it's a robust, vibrant, well-supported market, and it's really been a joy to see that come together. I think, and I don't know everything about it, but so I'll just leave it anonymous, but I've heard from people in even Madison that say, your winter market is so amazing. We don't have anything that compelling going on here in the winter. And it seems like they easily should, because they're 2 full growing zones warmer than us, so they get a few weeks on the front end and a few weeks on the back end of the growing season ahead of us. But it's really just about organization, and it's, one of the reasons we came back to Marathon County was this is where we grew up, and it's a vibrant community, and we like it, and we know that people pull together here, and we've really seen that with the winter market.
So in addition to carrots and beets, what are can you talk a little bit about your other crops that you depend on?
We grow somewhere in the neighborhood of 170 some different varieties of crops. There's that many entries on the Excel spreadsheet. But that's often, there's probably 14 or 15 different varieties of tomatoes, for example, alone, right? So we grow a lot of tomatoes. We grow hoop house tomatoes, as well as and cherry tomatoes, slicers, heirlooms, and then we grow some sort of Roma style tomatoes outside. Peppers, all different, some hot, mostly sweet bell peppers in different colors and different varieties. But really, everything: lettuces, spinach, kale, broccoli and cauliflower, and winter squash and summer squash and cucumbers and popcorn and dry beans. That's kind of my fun side project here lately. But sweet corn and it goes on and on. Everything we can figure out how to grow, basically. We even do still grow some potatoes.
So we're just coming through now the pandemic within the last year and a half, really.
Mm-hmm.
You went through the summer market as well as the winter market, and now can you speak a little bit about how that affected your farm and how you were doing business?
Yeah, we were pretty nervous going into the summer season. We had, one of the beautiful things about the CSA model is that people are committed to supporting. They're financially already invested at the front end of the season. And so our CSA filled. It actually filled the earliest it ever had at that point. And that's continued into this year. We filled even earlier this year. And I heard that from a lot of farms. A lot of CSA shares sold earlier and faster, and I think that was due to supply chain disruptions and things like that. People just really doubled down in their support, and more people eating at home too. So it's easier to gobble up a box of vegetables a week if you're eating more meals at home. So, obviously restaurant accounts went way down as they were facing all the different hurdles that they had, which far exceeded our hurdles. We weren't limited in capacity or anything. Basically, we were deemed essential and given the green light to go ahead and keep operating. And so restaurant accounts went down, but like I say, sales at farmers market and everything picked up to balance that out. But what we did, because the farmers, whether or not we were going to be able to go to farmers market on any given week, we run a very small, tight crew, and everybody works really hard. And if somebody got sick, whether it had been COVID or not, until we could, in the days that it would take to get tested and to find out, they wouldn't be on the team. And so we were worried about that. Unfortunately, everyone stayed very healthy on our immediate team there, and we were able to keep going. The farmers market was a challenge because so much of it is a gathering place, and so much of it is sort of a part of people's routines, weekly routines, and routines obviously got interrupted and everything. But there was a lot of people in the community who just doubled down and said, no, this is what this is what I want to eat, or this is what I want to support, or both. And more people were eating at home. So I think, any given order tended to be a little bit larger just because people were taking more of their meals at home and that sort of thing. But what we did was we started an online ordering platform so people could pre-order and do contactless pickup. They could pick up on the farm. We bought a big Quick Trip cooler, glass front cooler from Craigslist, and stuck it in the machine shed and just put up a little sign, and people could come. We actually had it stocked for anybody who wanted to stop by and shop, just on Friday afternoons and Saturday mornings, really, because that was what worked with our harvest schedule. But we also did pre-orders. People could pick up at the market. They could just pull up to the back of the stand and pick up their stuff and go. People could pick up on the farm, pre-orders, and that was how we really, and that took a lot. We didn't, you'll notice absent from the list of why we became farmers was because we were really good at figuring out new technologies with regards to internet and that sort of thing. So that was not really in our wheelhouse. But Stacy really made a point of figuring out how to do that and coming up with a system, and it wasn't perfect, but it was certainly well received. People really valued that, and that allowed us to continue to move forward during the pandemic and to better serve the people that support us.
So how do you see the future coming out of the pandemic, and maybe even just the future, how you see your future business model moving ahead? Do you see pretty much the the way it's been, or do you see new ways for you to develop your business, or how do you see the near future?
Yeah, we always see new ways to develop the business. That's probably Stacy and I must have, 90% of our conversations are centered around logistics. But the other 10%, a lot of it is just different plans and schemes, and what could we add, or what could we do, or how could we accomplish this, or how could we change that, and we tend to have a lot of plans, and we don't get too attached to them, and we only implement a very small percentage of those. But I see a lot of opportunities that way. I think that the online ordering is here to stay, even though it is a fair amount of extra work. So kind of what I was saying with the business model being that we grow for the CSA and then there's extra for the market or in other accounts. With the pre-orders, that gets really challenging because you don't get to just go out there and harvest what's ready and bring it and see what sells. You have to create an inventory all the time, and that's got to update in real time as people order, so you're not selling stuff you don't have and the like. And so it's really allowed us to move more food to better serve our community, but it is an ongoing challenge logistically on the farm to figure out how to keep those things running smoothly while everything else is going on. But people have liked it so much that I think it is going to be here to stay. That'll be, we set it up, just to serve a purpose. It seemed like, okay, this isn't going to blow over in a couple of weeks, so we better address this in a more comprehensive way. But now I think it's here to stay. Along with that, there's, we keep kind of coming up with new ideas that we want to pursue, but also other people bring us ideas too. And so now Marathon County Hunger Coalition got a donation last year and sort of launched this program that they had been thinking about, which is this produce shares box. And it was sort of in response to COVID and trying to make sure that we're feeding the people that needed the food the most here in Marathon County. And so they came up with this program to do essentially CSA shares, but they would get distributed through the neighbor's place and a few other places as well. And that took off and was great. And now we've found additional funding for this year, and we'll find out here soon if it was Mutual Wausau Insurance that made the donation last year that really kicked it off. We'll find out if they're going to support it again this year. And so that's another thing where just the community is coming together, and they said, okay, we want to donate to this cause. We think that there's a need. There's always a need in that regard, obviously, but especially with the pandemic, there was an outsized need as people were losing jobs and things like that to make sure that people had access to food. And a lot of residents of Marathon County, kids get a significant portion of their food at school, and schools were closed, and there's just, it's a very multifaceted thing. And this was something that they could do to address that, where the money would go to providing high quality food to people that need it most, and that sort of the ripple effects of that money would stay in the community. And that, that's when you spend money locally, it circulates in the immediate community. When you go shopping at Walmart, it goes right out of the community very quickly. So, and so that really took off and got some legs, and we found more support and funding, and we've expanded that program out to feed more families and include more farms, and I love that. I'm really excited about that program and looking forward to trying to help that grow into the future and expand to other communities as well. And we're working with Fair Share Coalition and Wisconsin Farmers Union, both to some extent on seeing if we can get that to kind of ripple out into other communities around the state. And so there's always things that way as far as changing the farm. But as far as farming in Marathon County, one of the really interesting things for me is this. Boy, I'm kind of opening a can of worms here. So, the average age of a farmer now is, I don't know, it's in the high 60s, I believe. I can't remember exactly. And there's this huge land transfer that we're in the midst of. So the statistic that I saw was that 70% of farmland in the U.S. was going to be changing hands in the next 20 years, and that was 3 years ago now. So we're on year 3 of that 20-year shift as people retire, cash out, pass on, and it gets inherited and that sort of thing, moves into trusts and all these different mechanisms, right, that farmland transfers hands. And agriculture is, it's not an easy way to make a living. And it's especially hard to enter into. I think land prices being what they are, volatility being what it is, I would also, personally, I just believe that our lack of sort of a social safety net in our culture really play into that. It makes it really challenging to start a farm. And we were really lucky and had a lot of hand-holding and a lot of people helping us through that process. But there's a lot of barriers to getting up and running as a farm. And I do think that growing food for direct sale to people results in a very responsible type of agriculture. And it also allows the farmer to capture a much larger share of the dollar of what they're producing. And so I see it as not only a way for small family farms to stay in business, where they might add in, even if you're a 100-acre dairy farm or whatever you might be, adding in a few acres of vegetables and that sort of thing is an opportunity for potentially the next generation or someone from the farm to branch out and say, okay, I'm going to do this just to round out cash flow and that sort of thing and help stay viable. But also, as an entry point into agriculture, it's largely becoming the only viable entry point into agriculture, I think, is smaller scale direct sales. It's very difficult to start a cash grain operation, out of the box, as it were.
Are those opportunities, and I know it's getting 45 minutes already, but those opportunities are still there for emerging farmers, for emerging people that feel that they want to move into farming, really?
Which opportunity? The opportunity is to start
a farm,
farm.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. I think they are still there. I strongly believe that. I think that the market is there. I think that the interest is growing all the time. From the, in terms of consumers and communities, organic food isn't a weird, freaky thing that your cousin whines about at Thanksgiving anymore. It's something that everybody's aware of and paying attention to, and certainly not everybody is ardent about it, but it's not a fringe bit of agriculture that can be totally ignored anymore. It's a significant and steadily growing market.
So we're 45. Anything else that you would like to? I think it's time to.
Sure.
You've been talking, and a great story, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity if there was other, great comments with regard to your story as well as to the story of farming and the opportunity for farming, not only in Marathon County but wherever. Any other further comments that you would want to make? Otherwise, we could start to wrap it up. If you,
I guess the only thing I'd like to say is that I'm very new to farming, and that I can the more I learn, the more I realize I didn't know or don't know, and I think that it's a fascinating realm, and I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I think that you've got to be passionate about it and dedicated to it. But I do think that opportunity exists and is readily available, and I think that there's really interesting things happening, especially in terms of sort of regenerative agriculture and just sort of very expert level farming models that are really exciting and that are very productive and viable.
Excellent. Thank you we thank you very much. This has been very informative. A great conclusion to June is Dairy Month and our series this month with regard to agriculture in Marathon County. So thank you very much for joining us, and we do appreciate your story, and thank you again.